Welcome back, Honors. All right, so we left off in class talking about the early Middle Ages, right? Or we left off in class talking about breaking up the Middle Ages into its time periods, right? So we talked about the early Middle Ages, 500 to about 1000 AD, being the time period where Europe is getting back on its feet again. We talked about the High Middle Ages, right, from about 1000 to 1300 AD, which is where there's a small return of prosperity in economics. Then we talked about the Late Middle Ages, which ranges actually, this is way too late, all right? It's about more like 1300 to about 1450, all right? So, which is defined by war, famine, disease, all right? So, big things about periodization. No, not necessarily is there a time that you can stand in like inside of a timeline and be like, oh, this is the High Middle Ages. Blah. Like nobody called them that during the time. They didn't periodize history like that. We do this so we can better understand what was going on during this time period, right? And this is really important for the Middle Ages because we don't know much about it, all right? Why do we not know much about the Middle Ages? A lot of it is due to the fact that only 4% of people during this time period could read or write. So you're talking about people who could have recorded or analyzed history are very few and far between. And they only really typically worked in one location, the church. And their skills were not used to record history. They were used to record new biblical texts, understand the Bible, and read it better, right? So the Middle Ages is a very convoluted, very weird time, okay? But it's okay. All right, so now look, getting into it though, you have to understand that we're now moving into the early Middle Ages, right? So in your notes, go ahead and write early Middle Ages is a big time period line, right? Big line right across the top. So you can know that we're like, all right, Mr. Terry is beginning the early Middle Ages, right? We're starting right here. So the beginning of the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, is best defined by the end of the Roman emperors, check this out, the fall of the Roman Empire, and it's also very well defined as invasions or migrations, right? So actually it's more like invasions, actual migrations, right? So we believe that this time period is going to see a massive influx of barbaric tribes into Europe during the early Middle Ages, about 500, circa 500 or late 400s AD, right? These barbarians are going to begin to move in. They are going to pick up the leftover scraps of what is left behind by the Romans, and some of them have had direct contacts with Romans. And Brooke brought up a great point the other day. It's not like all the Romans died. There were some of them still left mingling around, right? Some of them were still left and present. So we believe some people that actually were alive and maybe leaders in Rome became leaders of these barbarians, right? But it's not like these few intellectual people could read, write, or actually transcribe all the things that happened to them, all right? So what you're going to see, though, is a select few people rising up to lead them, okay? But these barbarians are important to define, okay? We got to talk about who they are, why they're called that, things like that. Now, to us in the modern era, a barbarian is used to define a person who is believed to be like uncivilized, right? So barbarian definition. So there we go. Yeah. So check this out, okay? In the dictionary.com definition, a barbarian is in ancient times a member of a community or tribe not belonging to one of the great civilizations. Greeks, Romans, or Christianity, right? So barbarian in colloquial terms is usually referring to an uncivilized person, okay? And a barbarian in Roman terms really goes back to the Latin word root barbar, which means to babble, right? Babble, like, which is going to be a fill-in-the-blank question on your test, to babble, because they couldn't understand them, right? So they weren't that uncivilized, though, all right? It's not that the barbarians were super uncivilized. It's that they were at a normal step in their progression, right? They were at a normal step in their time development, going from nomadic to semi-nomadic to sedentary, right? They went from moving around all the time to find food to sort of moving around a little bit to find food to not moving around at all to find food once they migrated into the Roman territories, right? So the people who call them uncivilized, right, during this time period were the Romans. And to Romans, everyone is uncivilized that's not Roman, all right? They didn't even think the Greeks were civilized. They were like, oh, they're close, I guess. All right, they literally talk junk about the Greeks all the time, even though ironically enough, the Greeks came before them by several hundred years, and most of their culture is based off Greek culture, all right? So big thing, though, also to understand is that they had a lot of stupid reasons for calling them uncivilized. They referred to them as uncivilized because of their diets. They referred to them as uncivilized because of their language. They referred to them as uncivilized because of their inability to have a written system or a writing system. They referred to them, my favorite one though, they referred to them as uncivilized because they didn't water down their wine. Yeah, so Romans would drink wine pretty much all day, right? So they would drink wine most times of the day because it provided a very large benefit, okay? So because not all water during this time period was necessarily super clean. Adding some types of alcohol into your water would actually allow that alcohol to kill any remaining bacteria, and it made it a little bit safer to drink, right? So Romans would typically water their wine down so they could drink it for long periods of time. Barbarians didn't do that. When barbarians drank wine, it was usually a rare commodity, so when they were drinking it to have a good time, right? It was like Mardi Gras to the friggin' barbarians when they had wine, whereas the Romans, they had it all the time. So Romans were like, ugh, they don't even water down their wine. All right, so that was what made them so uncivilized. Then also you have to understand that barbarians conquer in the pursuit of land resources, territory if they can find it, and also they don't look like this. All right, so everybody thinks oh wait, actually you can see me right now. This is me on a barbarian body. All right, now look, but the big thing though, barbarians don't look like what guys in high school probably think they look like in a video game, all right? They don't look like these dudes with real big blue face paint that have ponytails and giant swords and stuff. They actually look like this, all right? So that's what a barbarian actually looks like. Notice he's got pieces of Roman technology, because barbarians did live in the Roman Empire before it actually fell, right? Before Rome fell, barbarians were conscripted into the army, right? Remember when I said Sulla cheated and used a conscript army? Yeah, they were conscripts of barbarians, right? Barbarians had some Roman technology, but they didn't necessarily know how to make it, right? So they had iron weapons. They had some simple shields. Their shields, though, typically were made out of wood instead of actually the cylindrical iron shields that you saw on a Roman legionary, right? So they did have some pieces of Roman technology, but it was because they were shown or given to them when they were fighting in the Roman military, okay? And then when Rome falls, they are left with these things, and now they have to figure out how to make them on their own. But that's what a barbarian actually looks like. We believe this guy right here is a Visigoth. Yeah, that's a Visigoth barbarian from around the 5th century AD, which includes the 400s, all right? So very important to understand that barbarians shouldn't be judged so harshly, right? The Romans they rip on them all the time, right? They just make fun of them constantly. But barbarians shouldn't be judged so badly. It's not that they were not smart. It's not that they were not good at what they were doing. They just didn't have the intellectual advancement that the Romans did, but no one did. No one had that advancements, right? So when the Romans fall, they fell, and it's not like they showed the barbarians how to do this stuff. They don't want to show them how to do it. If they would have showed them how to do it, the barbarians might have rose up and actually taken over, okay? So the barbarians shouldn't be judged. Be nice to them, okay? They had kings, sort of. They had chiefs and stuff, you know what I mean? They had people that led their individual groups. For example, in in Germanic tribes, they had leaders called Reichs, right? So and the Reich was literally the leader of the group or the leader of the tribe. And there were multiple tribes everywhere, and the Reichs actually at one point came together and united and had a massive battle against the Romans. And there's a series on Netflix that's actually made about it right now. It's called Barbarians. It's actually very good too. It's in German and Latin, which is neat. All right, so now look, barbarians created money. Eventually, when they figured out how to do it and when they understood what it was, they created money. And also, barbarians settled all of Europe, and they're the origin of all their current day people, right? You are probably descendant of a barbarian, all right? So all of us are descendant of the barbarians, right? I am descendant of the Germanic barbarians from the north, right? And you have barbarians coming from everywhere. These right here, these are your earliest barbarian groups, right? Your first barbarian groups that began to move in and settle during the late empire period before Rome actually fell. From Asia, you had the Huns, which we know caused a lot of problems for the Romans, okay? The Huns and the Magyars, right? The Huns are going to end up in the areas where you consider of now Russia, and the Magyars are going to end up in the areas where you consider Western Russia, Poland, and Hungary, right? And the Magyars are particularly going to be in Hungary because of literally the word, how Hungarians say Hungary is Magyar. Now, from the Germanic north, though, streaming in from the northern areas of Europe into this area right here, is going to be the Slavonic or the Slavic or the Germanic tribes, right? And you're talking about the Saxons, the Angles, and the Goths, right? So they're going to be starting to sweep in when there's all this resettlement in the late Roman Empire period, right? The Saxons, the Angles, and the Goths, right? So, and no, I don't mean Goths like, it's just a phase, Mom. I really like black. Get out of my room. Not like that, okay? But I'm talking about Goths as in the tribe of people, right? So then those people are going to continue to interbreed, branch apart, and other new groups are going to move in. So the Goths are actually going to split into two groups called the Ostrogoths, which are going to head down towards the Italian peninsula, and they're the big reason why Rome falls completely, okay? So because they actually take the entire thing over, and Ottokar takes over the city of Rome in 476, and he is an Ostrogoth king, right? And he's actually claimed the ruler of Rome after that, or what was left. He's the Ostrogothic ruler, right? And so they're going to go to the Italian peninsula. The Visigoths are going to head over to modern-day Spain, right? The guy I just showed you in the picture a second ago. They're extremely important. And then the Angles and the Saxons are going to settle modern-day Britain, and they're also going to settle Germany. And then the Franks are going to settle Central Europe, right? And they're going to be the origin of modern-day France, all right? So other really important group that I don't have on here, though, the Vandals, right? The Vandals are the ones who swept into Rome, destroyed all that stuff, and are the reason why you have the word vandalism, because they actually destroyed Roman statues and things like that on purpose, right? So the Vandals are another group as well. So you got tons and tons of barbarian groups. And eventually, when Rome falls to the Ostrogoths, they're going to start organizing, all right? Barbarian tribes are eventually going to put hereditary rulers in power, and they're eventually going to start making permanent settlements in Europe, and even though they single-handedly destroyed everything of intelligence, which stinks, but it does happen sometimes. They destroyed everything of intelligent value the world produced up to this point. They are going to resettle Europe and create the modern-day Europe cultural breakup that you know now. These barbarians are the reason why there's so many languages spoke in Europe, because Latin would blend with the language of the barbarians and create modern-day languages like German, right? For example, there are German cognates that exist in English because Latin still held over in the Anglish language, because the Angles blended with Latin and then also blended with French and created English, right? French is going to blend, or the Frankish language is going to blend with Latin and make French, like all this other different kinds of stuff, right? It's very important that we understand this. The language of the Visigoths is going to blend with Latin and make Spanish. Because they're on the Spanish peninsula. Now, the big ones that we have to talk about, though, we got to chat. Very important. We got to chat about the Franks. All right, so the Franks are going to create the Frankish kingdom, and they're going to be the first kingdom since the fall of Rome, okay? So when Rome falls in 476 AD, there's going to be a massive scrambling around of these barbarian groups. But no one forms a kingdom until the Franks come along in the late 400s AD, and they establish what is known as the Frankish kingdom, which is the first kingdom to exist since Rome fell, all right? So you're seeing your first place pop up. And the first guy to lead those people is this guy, all right? His name is right here, okay? The dude that actually is the very first king of Europe following the fall of Rome is going to be a guy by the name of Clovis, right? Clovis the First. Clovis the First is going to establish the Frankish kingdom in Central Europe. Now, interestingly enough, many historians believe that he may have actually been, he may have actually been a Roman military leader. Many people believe that since he was born in 466, right, he would have been alive as Rome is scrambling to get everything like squared away before they fall completely. And once they fell, he would have maybe possibly been still in one of the legionary armies, right, or inside of a legion somewhere. So he may have actually been a Roman military leader, right? So the big thing, though, going forward as well, is he has conquered many small tribes and competing tribes, and he goes out in the Frankish territory, and all these different Frankish tribes, he starts uniting them together and bringing them under the leadership of one individual person, himself, right? And also his family. And his family is known as the Merovingian dynasty, right? So he creates the Merovingian dynasty, okay? And he conquers all those tribes, and he creates these political leaders. Now, this, very important, though. Other big thing he does after he establishes this is he converts to Catholic Christianity, right? So Clovis was encouraged by his wife to convert to Catholic Christianity. And he was like, I don't want to do that. We have all these other things going on. I don't want to do that. That sounds lame. I have this pagan thing I like. I got a couple other gods from like the old things I like from the Roman era. And then like also, what's up with this whole Christianity thing? Well, his wife told him, she was like, well, sweetheart, you have to understand that like Christianity is blowing up ever since the Romans legalized it. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, tell me more. And she's like, well, it's blowing up, and there are competing types of Christianity. There's this thing called Arian Christianity, where they believe that like Jesus wasn't a part of God, but he's like a little bit lower. But then there's Trinitarian Christianity, or the Catholic Christians, who believe that it's like Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You should convert to the Trinitarian one to create a unified type of Christian in this area so you can have more power, right? So it'll give you more power, man. It'll be a good thing. If you convert to Christianity, it'll give you more power. And Clovis is sitting there listening to his wife, and he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I really want to do that. That sounds like a terrible idea. And like he's like, I like having like a bunch of gods for all the stuff. Like I have one of thunder, and I have one of the earth and everything. It's kind of neat. It's like Marvel characters, right? So like, he doesn't want to do it, and his wife's like, all right, yeah, you want to play that game? Fine. And she takes one of his sons, who would be the next king, and goes and baptizes him in secret, right? Goes to baptize him secretly, but there was an infection or a bacteria in the baptismal font, and he got it, and his son died after being baptized Catholic. And so Clovis is like, I'm definitely not doing this now. And then she says, okay, that was just a test run. Let's try this other kid. And they baptize his second son, and he almost dies. But after enough convincing, Clovis does finally convert to Christianity, right? Now, he is considered the founder of France, and the biggest thing about it is he is the first person to receive the ruling crest of the fleur-de-lis, right? When he converts to Trinitarian Christianity, they bestow upon him the fleur-de-lis, which literally is meant to be the flower of the lily or the flower of the field, and it's supposed to represent the ruling houses of France, and also their blending with Christianity, hence the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It's supposed to be either a lily flower or also a European iris, but now, because this is the ruling symbol of France, it's why New Orleans is defined in the New Orleans area, Metairie included, is defined by the fleur-de-lis, right? Because the French are going to grab onto the symbol, but Clovis is the first one to be awarded this thing. Now, he's going to create the very first empire, I guess you could call it, right? Give or take. And he becomes like the father of France, okay? Creates the first empire, country, territory, area, ever since the fall of Rome. Now, this is what the Frankish kingdom looks like, though, going into about 1768, okay? So, or not 1768, until about 768. What you need to understand is that after Clovis establishes the Frankish kingdom right here, it then begins to grow. All right, so it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And a lot of it is getting bigger underneath leadership of these different barbarian leaders, right? Now, some of you are like, oh, it's going to be like, you know, he's king, and then another person follows up as king, that was his son, and then his son becomes king. Yeah, you are right. But here's the issue, all right? So what's wrong with these early kings? They're not the smartest bulbs in the box, right? You're talking about early Middle Ages. Clovis is probably the best king of the Merovingian dynasty and of the early rulers, right? And he knew how to read, he knew how to write, and he knew how to do all these other things. But his sons didn't, right? And so they appointed someone to help his sons rule. And I need you to jot this down. And that title is called the mayor of the palace, right? The mayor of the palace is the guy that advised the king, and he was like, hey, do this, do that, okay? The mayor of the palace had to know how to read and write. The mayor of the palace had to know how to do all these different things. And the mayor of the palace was basically the leader of the Frankish kingdom, right? And so as the Frankish kingdom began to progress, the mayor of the palace became a very, very highly sought after and fought over title, right? And you have to understand that this guy is the most famous mayor of the palace, right? His name is Charles Martel, right? Nicknamed the Hammer, right? He is nicknamed the Hammer due to the fact that he saved the Frankish kingdom from falling, and he saved the Frankish kingdom from being taken over by outside forces. This guy, Charles Martel, is a very important figure, okay? And a lot of it boils down to one huge victory at this place, the Battle of Tours, right? At the Battle of Tours, Charles the Hammer Martel slammed the Muslims back into Spain. All right, so like think about it that way. He's just taking a hammer, he's going wham, 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 right? Because the sons and descendants of Clovis began to kind of fight and bicker over different areas, and this area down here, known as Aquitaine, was taken over by Muslim forces that had come up through North Africa. Because you need to understand, the Umayyad Caliphate was absolutely huge, right? This right here is the Muslim kingdoms during the Middle Ages in Europe. It is the biggest and wealthiest empire since the Romans. Some historians argue that it was larger than the Roman Empire at its height. And the Muslims are going to take over this entire area of North Africa, and they're even going to go up into Spain. And Charles the Hammer Martel is going to prevent them and stop them at the border of France, modern-day France and Spain, right? So Charles the Hammer Martel at the Battle of Tours, right? Write down, say it with me now. The Battle of Tours prevents the Muslims from moving up into Frankish territory and taking over the Frankish kingdom, right? So this right here is a very famous painting that symbolizes the Battle of Tours. However, this was made in like the late 1500s, right? So like, of course, this isn't made in the Middle Ages. No one in the Middle Ages could make this really quick. I'm going to say this one more time. This painting is not from the Middle Ages, okay? It was from after the Middle Ages in the Romantic era. So it may even be from the 1800s. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember. Now, this, though, symbolizes Charles right here, the Hammer Martel, even though I know he's holding an axe, but calm down. The hammer is defending Christianity, and also this woman who is supposed to possibly represent Mary, who's holding a baby, against these Muslims who are coming in to actually try and destroy what they have built, right? So it's a very romanticized and overhyped, and everything is darkened for perspective and stuff like that. It's also kind of racist, but still, it's a great image to actually understand the Battle of Tours and its importance. And Charles Martel was your guy, the mayor of the palace, right? Who actually ruled under some of these crappy leaders that followed Clovis. Now, this right here is actually an example as well of Muslim influence in Europe. This architectural scheme is actually from Andalusia, Spain, right? And this right here, this is Muslim architecture, okay? Muslim architecture is very, very important. And it's very important to understand that it still exists in Europe because of that Umayyad Caliphate actually existing there. But Charles Martel prevents them from spreading into Spain, okay? Now, this dude is his grandson, all right? So Charles Martel, his grandson is known as Charlemagne, right? Charlemagne is the most important leader of the dynasty created by Charles Martel, okay? Because Charles Martel, being the mayor of the palace, actually saw the death of the king that he was advising, right? So he died and was like, do we need to replace him? You know what I mean? Like Charles Martel at one point was like, do we really need to do this? Why do we need to like replace him with another king when like I can just do this on my own? And Charles Martel ruled independently by himself as the ruler, as the mayor of the palace. And his son, Pepin the Short, would actually be like the new king of this group called the Carolingian dynasty, named after Charles, right? Named after Charles Martel. It's the House of Charles, right? So Charles Martel, his son, Pepin the Short, creates some little things and some foundations, but Pepin's son, Charlemagne, becomes a very important leader in Middle Ages history, right? He is a powerful leader. He's a strong Christian, right? And he creates the Carolingian Empire by expanding off Merovingian success and his own family's rulership, right? Without Pepin, without Charles Martel, Charlemagne would have never been able to create the Europe you know now, all right? So this guy right here, look at him, stare at him, look at his name, literally means Charles the Great in Latin, all right? Because it's from Carolus Magnus, and Carolus Magnus means Charles the Great, and when it's anglicized, you say Charlemagne, right? So Charlemagne, his name means greatness, okay? And he is the father of modern-day Europe, right? He is also, there you go. So he is going to do all kinds of stuff, right? He's going to expand the Frankish kingdom and make it even bigger. He's going to protect Catholicism when it was under attack by these people known as the Lombards, and then it was under attack by several other groups, and by Pope Leo III, who was the Pope at the time. Charlemagne even creates a country for the Catholic Church, known as the Papal States, right? And Pope Leo III, to show him his gratitude, crowns Charlemagne as the first Roman emperor since the fall of Rome. Except we don't call it the Roman Empire anymore. We call it the Holy Roman Empire, right? So Charlemagne is crowned as the first Holy Roman Emperor after he saves Leo III from attack in Rome, and also after he carves out a country for him known as the Papal States, right? Charlemagne is known as the father of Europe as well because he's going to unite a lot of barbarian tribes. He's going to fight off a lot of groups in the north, and he's going to unite barbarians under this Western European idea, and he's going to bring about some stability. He's also going to create this thing known as the Carolingian Renaissance. When Charlemagne comes to power, he begins to implore the leaders of his groups, his nobles, the people around him, and the clergy around him, that all of you need to know how to read and write. All of you need to know how to read and write. All of you need to know how to, we need to value intelligence again, right? And so in the Carolingian Renaissance, those important things begin to come back, right? And all the people in his court had to know how to read and write. And with that, you saw some slight amounts of painting come back. It wasn't good, but it was decent. And then also you had this, write this down. Carolingian, and then write minuscule, M-I-N-I-S-C-U-L-E, which is how we write now, right? The form of writing using capital letters, lowercase letters, also the question mark and the exclamation point are parts of this thing called Carolingian minuscule that were created under Charles the Great, under Charlemagne to create a universal writing system inside the Frankish kingdom, right? So as you can see, Charlemagne, very important. He's going to grow his kingdom to a massive size. And we'll talk about a lot of other stuff in class when we talk about these people, okay? So we are going to begin talking about the Vikings in class when I see you guys on Monday. Y'all have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy yourselves. See you later.